So once you are finished with coloring in all of your polyhedron, I'm going to show you some very specific ways to cut this out and assemble it that's going to make this successful. You will need a couple of things: a ruler and a pencil, a pair of scissors, and just a regular knife from your kitchen, and I'll explain what that's for in just a minute. To start, you're going to cut out your shape very, very carefully, cutting exactly on the lines. And one thing that I want to tell you is to make sure that you don't cut off the tabs for gluing this together. And as you're cutting, you want to cut very carefully, very precisely. And I want to show you one thing. When you're cutting into a corner like this, where two edges meet up at that point, the paper that we're using, this cardstock, if you cut all the way to the end of your scissors and let your scissors snip closed, it puts a little tiny tear where the scissors have closed all the way, and we don't want that. So when you cut into a corner, you want to make sure that you cut up to it somewhere along the middle of the scissors rather than letting it snip down all the way at the very point of the scissors. If you do it that way, you won't end up with that little tear. I'm just cutting right up to that edge, and then I cut in from a different angle that next section until those two pieces fall apart just like that. That's really important because it's going to help the structural integrity of this project. Notice I don't try to go all the way around to cut it all out in one big piece with the extra. I cut it out in parts. That way I can rotate and turn however is comfortable for my hand. And now, before you start to fold, if you try to fold this piece together, it is going to very, very quickly fold in wrong directions and be really hard to assemble, and you'll get some really unattractive crease lines that just aren't very pretty. So I'm going to show you a trick with your ruler and this knife from your house. Where the tabs are supposed to be, and I'm just going to do this one little tab at a time, I am going to flip this over and visualize. You can also hold it up to the light and see the light shining through it, but I'm going to put a little pencil line at the beginning of that tab and at the end of that tab. And I'm going to hold my ruler on the back side where those two little marks are and take my knife, and not using the serrated side that you would actually cut with, just very, very carefully holding it with the opposite side down, the really blunt edge. Holding this very carefully with your ruler and holding it really steady so it doesn't slide. I'm just going to use that blunt edge to push a little crease line onto the back. And that little crease line is going to help me make a nice clean fold. And so then really gently, I'm going to push that crease back. And on the front side, it's going to give me a really beautiful clean cut edge. And I'm only going to fold it back. I'm not going to fold it back completely flat. I'm just going to fold it up to where it's at a 90-degree angle. And that's about all that I need. That's perfect. So now I'm going to do the same thing with each and every crease line that I see. So I have my next crease line is right through here. So again, flipping it over, kind of looking at the light through it Gonna make a little mark for myself just so I know I'm at the right spot. So line my ruler up. Take the back side of the blade and push that crease line there. And then I can gently use that crease line to help me fold that perfectly along that edge. Now the reason why we don't want to do this on the front side is because it doesn't work as well. It works much better if you do that on the back side, because that's where that crease line compresses it. It helps that paper fold and collapse on itself in that way. And do that for each one. If you have trouble seeing through the paper where the crease line should be, another good trick is to take your piece of paper and hold it up against a window during the daytime, and you can see, it's just like looking through, like with like a bright light box back behind you. You can see those markings really, really clearly and really well. And if you want, I do notice this line lines up with this one all the way through, so I may do both of those at once just to save me a little bit of time. I may come all the way across the tab and that cut on the triangle. So now all of my pieces have a nice fold, a beautiful crease line on them that's nice and neat. And now we're going to start to assemble our polyhedron. So with your Elmer's glue, but I'm going to take one edge, and I like to make sure it's one that I can easily fold, and notice how it slides right underneath and gives me a really pretty edge. I'm going to just put a few little dots right along the edge. You can take your finger and just right on that tab. Don't get any glue on the front, but I can just spread that glue out, give me a nice even coat, slide it in place, and I'm gonna pinch, get my fingers to where I'm pushing all 4 fingers against the inside and the outside. And now I just have to hold and wait. Okay, so that first seam, I've held it long enough to let it really dry good. It seems to be holding up pretty well, so now I'm gonna fold in and do my next seam. And this time, I can't really get my fingers on the inside to hold this one, so I'm gonna make sure I put just a tiny bit of pressure here, slide everything into place, and hold that seam. I'm not pushing hard enough to crush it, just enough to let that glue set up and dry. I think I'll do that one next. Now for the last two, I'm down to my very last section that needs to be glued in. I'm going to have to put glue on both of those two remaining tabs at the same time. And so now I'm just going to try to push on that edge and this edge all at the same time and hold that for that to dry. Okay, and once you are finished with this, this is such a cool little shape. You can rotate it and look at it from all the different sides. I was really happy with how everything turned out on mine, so I hope that you are happy with yours as well, and I hope you had fun making this.